You're listening to The Joe Cronin Show.
Tonight is November 15th, 2015, and this is episode number 2 of the Sunday Night Slam, right here on The Joe Cronin Show, and of course, ExtremeWrestlingPodcast.com. And tonight, Christopher Daniels stops by to talk about Ring of Honor, TNA, and his wrestling career, as well as news on a TNA star that is leaving the company. Plus, I talk WWE and more. All that and more on the Sunday Night Slam, right here on The Joe Cronin Show. What's up, wrestling fans? My name is Joe Cronin. Welcome to The Joe Cronin Show. A little bit of a later edition of the Sunday Slam, so I'm glad to be here with you as far as Sunday Slam goes. We're going to be joined by Ring of Honor star Christopher Daniels, so I can't wait to get to that. But I also want to say today I dedicate this show, of course, today to Nick Bockwinkel. Thank you so much for all the memories, all the matches, and just being a legend. There's so much to go over with Nick Bockwinkel that he deserves his own show, and we don't have time for that now, but he deserves his own one. So I'm going to go into a video about Nick Bockwinkel, I think, on my own in a separate video, but we're getting ready for Christopher Daniels to show up to do that interview. He's going to be joining us by phone in just a few because we were having some video trouble earlier, so he's going to join us via phone. That's going to be awesome news. TNA star, one of the Knockouts, has officially left the company, so she's done. Brooke Tessmacher, she's all done. Brooke Adams is all done. She came to the company in 2010, and now she has left. She still hasn't been taken down from the website yet, but you know something? Neither has Bully Ray and MVP and James Storm. What the heck? Who is editing the website for TNA, or who's making the decision for that? Wild stuff. Unbelievable stuff. Guys, if you want to support my show and donate, the link is going to be in the description box below. So I know this isn't live, but you can still support the show, and we'll give you a shout-out for that. But I just appreciate if you can help out the show. That is in the description box below. Also, check me out on ProWrestlingTees.com under YouTube and podcasts, The Joe Cronin Show. And, of course, our guest today, Christopher Daniels, on Pro Wrestling Tees as well. And also go to WrestleCrate.com, 10% off if you use coupon code JOESENTME to get it off of the monthly subscription box. Hope you can check that out as well. It looks like we're about to be joined by Christopher Daniels. Chris, can you hear me? Oh, yeah, so I asked you, one of the things that I wanted to, that a lot of people have been asking me about and wanted to know about was that jacket that you got. Like, where did you get it? Where did you come up with it? It was awesome, like the first time I saw it.
When Frankie and I turned heel in Ring of Honor, I had already had a military idea with the jacket I had when we were doing Bad Influence in TNA. But since we were turning heel, I wanted to go like full bore. So I started searching like military jackets online and found a place that made it for me. And then I had I got the plain jacket with no symbols, no accoutrements on it. And then I had the lady that does my gear like add my symbol and some other things to it. And then it ended up working out really good. To me, it ended up being exactly what I was envisioning in terms of that image.
Yeah, it definitely was. It was really cool. More than ever right now, at least for me watching, and sometimes I'm a little behind you guys because I'll catch up on Ring of Honor. 2 weeks later, I'll go back and have to catch up on everything. But right now, as far as the tag team division goes, it's kind of like it's a great time right now to be in the tag team division in Ring of Honor. I mean, just so many things going on, and with the Young Bucks coming in now, and with you guys, with the Kingdom, the Addiction, just it's one of the strongest, if not the strongest, probably is the strongest tag team division in pro wrestling right now. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. The year and a half we've been there already, and having worked with all those teams you mentioned, plus Red Dragon, right, plus the Briscoes, plus War Machine, there's been such a good focus on tag team wrestling in that company because there are so many strong teams that are there to be strong teams. And so we've had a lot of fun, and sort of being put in that mix has sort of forced us to step our game up and be the best team that we can be. And that was one of the reasons that we were happy that Ring of Honor gave us the opportunity to be a part of the roster.
Yeah, no, it's turned out great, and it is. It's growing, it's building, it's exciting. It's so good to see tag team wrestling in Ring of Honor the way it is right now. Now, taking a step back, a lot of people know who you are, but a lot of people may not know who you are. And taking a step back to the beginning of your career, pre-2000s, when you first started out as a wrestler, what actually made you want to become a wrestler? You've probably covered this before, but I'm interested to know because I don't.
Well, I grew up in North Carolina watching the Mid-Atlantic Territories, the NWA, before it became the WCW, and that really got me into pro wrestling as a kid. That was what I, grew up watching and grew up liking. The first wrestler that I called my favorite wrestler was Magnum TA, and then soon after that, it was Sting. And so I grew up watching, Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes and the Road Warriors and the Horsemen and the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express. But at that time, it never really occurred to me that there might be an opportunity for me to be a wrestler, just because everybody was, that larger than life, muscular. Like I said, the Road Warriors and Terry Gordy and just these big guys.
Right.
And then it wasn't until after I graduated college, I was a theater major, and I was off living in Chicago, trying to make my way into the theater scene up there.
Yeah.
And I had made a comment to the lady who would end up becoming my wife that, if this acting thing doesn't work out, I can always be a pro wrestler, sort of tongue-in-cheek. And she, one day, just decided, I'll look for a place, and found a wrestling school in Chicago, which was 30 minutes from where I lived. And there was like a lull in the stuff that I was doing as far as acting was going. So I decided just to give it a try. And, with the idea that if I washed out and it didn't work out for me, that I would be able to at least say, well, I gave it a try, kids. And that was January of 93 was when I started training. And by April, I was wrestling matches.
Wow.
And so, and so for the first year and a half, I was just doing stuff at Windy City Pro Wrestling. And then it wasn't until 96 when I moved to California
that
I started working, a lot more independent stuff, and found my way into getting into Japan, found my way into getting into like the Lucha Libre scene out in California, got myself working not dark matches, but like Shotgun Saturday Night stuff with WWF.
Yeah.
And when I did that, that got me overseas and sort of got me noticed on the independent scene on the East Coast. And that's all around 1997, 98. That all sort of culminated into me getting on the independent scene in a strong way.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was going to bring that up. How you got into involved with WWE pretty quickly in a way, with wrestling, but it almost that launched your independent career. It didn't do what, and it does that to a lot of guys sometimes, but it doesn't do what everyone thinks. Like right now, a lot of the younger wrestling fans think that you work 15 or 20 years and then you get to the WWE. Like they think everyone, it's like Kevin Owens or something. Whereas for you, it opened the door to all those other things, but you were already doing
right.
them.
Yeah, because the developmental scene is so different now.
Yeah.
That and the WWE at this point is paying a lot more attention to the independent scene in terms of their developmental program, versus back in the day, you were basically like I was basically a local extra hired on a couple places. Like my first Shotgun Saturday Night match was in Phoenix, Arizona, I believe, and that was where I got a chance to wrestle Taka Michinoku when they had the light heavyweight title. And that match, being on Shotgun Saturday Night, was one of the first things that people on the East Coast saw and said, oh, well, this guy's good. Let's get him working over on the East Coast where all the independents were. And then it also helped me get over to Japan because working with Taka got me seen by guys at Michinoku Pro. And the gentleman that helped me get over there was named Victor Quinones, who did a lot in Puerto Rico, but was also the liaison between WWF and a lot of the Japanese talent and the Mexican talent that they were using when the light heavyweight title was in existence.
Right. And you know what's weird? You know, you say that too in the light heavyweight title. Why? A lot of times the WWE mentions, the WWF mentions how they didn't really do the right thing with the lightweight division, how it didn't work ever with them. Taco was over. But I always wondered why they didn't just go out and get some more good light heavyweight competition. And the fact that they had you, but maybe not a lot of people, really get to see you, like on Raw and things like that. And I wonder why that didn't happen. And how were you received? With you being there on those Shotgun Saturday nights and things like that. How were you received within the WWE at that time? What were the plans? Was it a positive, or was it why didn't it continue? Put it that way.
I never. There was never an opportunity where it was they never offered me anything. I don't think they looked at me as someone that they could sort of get behind. I feel like at that moment they didn't really have. I don't know if it was that they didn't have faith in the light heavyweight division, or they just didn't see me as someone that would fit in. I mean, they saw me as like a good enough hand to allow me to work matches for, the Shotgun Saturday Night, the syndicated programs, maybe a Sunday Night Heat or dark match every once in a while. But it never turned into something where they were actively pursuing me or anything. And I just think, it was just whatever their plans were, I just didn't fit into them.
Right. And you mentioned it, and in WWE there's a lot of theatrics, there's a lot of characters at all times and things like that. And for whatever reason, though, you actually bring that. You mentioned the theatrical background. I was going to say there's always an element of theatrics and language. You always have, a charismatic way of speaking, but also you have an interesting choice of language and words that you use in promos and in general talk to go along with the theatrics and the seriousness and intensity of a promo. And is that something that you did borrow from your theater background?
A little bit of that, and then also sort of being a comic book fan, sort of considering myself well-read in that respect, and seeing how, theatrically, and then in terms of the comic book villains, that sort of idea. I mean, I felt like one of my strong suits, despite, I think in WWF's eyes, physically I wasn't something that they would try to get behind.
Right.
But I felt like verbally, I felt like I could do a good job. And so that was always something that I wanted to try and push as a strong point in trying to work with them. And it just, like I said, it just never, like we never connected on that level for whatever reason.
Do you think
the people there were some people that were there, like, for example, Jim Cornette, who was working there at the time, he worked very hard to try and get me opportunities. And that was one of the reasons why I did so many, so many of the syndicated matches for them, but nothing ever came together in terms of a long-term position.
There's two quick things that I want to mention. I want to say, did you ever have was there ever a frustration that you had being there where somebody you just couldn't get over? And also, what do you think of it now, where someone like a Finn Balor's there, or Fergal Devitt, do you see WWE now in NXT and think further down the road it's more believable than ever that that's attainable at this point?
For different people, I feel like at this point I might be a little bit past the point where they would look at me as someone to start with. You know what I mean? And I've had this discussion with guys when I was at TNA, and people that had worked with WWE that were at TNA at that point. They basically, one of them basically said, I wasn't tooled to work there, but I might have been tooled to start working there. If I had already been established, if I had had a little bit of name recognition at that level, there might have been an easier path for me to get in there. But it's just the way that things turned out, I feel like probably the window of opportunity for me to be in what would be now NXT might have been while I was under contract with TNA, and so the timing just didn't work out in that respect. But certainly at this point, with the way that Triple H is sort of viewing the guys on the independent scene and giving guys like you said, Finn and Kevin Owens, and a lot of guys, and Samoa Joe, giving those guys opportunities to sort of break into NXT and watch them, sink or swim on that level. If that was around 10 years ago, maybe that might have been the path that I could have taken, but it just didn't work out that way.
Right. No, I agree, and I think the door is surprisingly more open to everybody than it ever has.
Sure.
There's people that I just can't believe it. If you went back 2 years ago and you told me some of the people that are there now, you know what I mean? I just would not believe that. And
right, and I think part of that has to do with the success of guys like Punk and Cesaro, Sami Zayn. Like you look at those guys who did so much on the independent scene before they got into WWE and their developmental system. And Bryan Danielson, a perfect example of someone who went all over the world, and when the time came, they put him into the feeder system, I guess you would call it. And this was before it was NXT, when it was FCW, and Bryan went and succeeded, and Punk went and succeeded, and then finally their success on the grand stage, on the WWF level, which has been now WWE, their success there sort of, it broke the standard mold of how guys were being brought in. And so now I think there's more of an open mind to say, okay, well, this gentleman's been on the independent scene. He's wrestled a lot of different styles, a lot of different places. Let's give him an opportunity to get into NXT and see how he does. And so a lot of guys are getting that break and showing that it's a positive step and a positive way to get into that, a positive path to take to get to that level.
So when you after this WWE stint and everything else, you go to Japan, you do a bunch of things, but then eventually you start with Ring of Honor, and I was intense, ready to watch. I had to get a tape, I think, at the time. I either downloaded it or I got a tape. I don't remember how I got my first Ring of Honor stuff, but it was months after it had already come out. You guys had already done a few pay-per-views and things like that, I think it was. But I think you were involved in the first one, right?
Right. The very first show, I was in the main event with Bryan Danielson and Low Key.
Right.
And it had to, like, if you got it after a couple months after, then you got it on VHS tape, because this was 2002.
Yeah, it was 2002.
So, this was before downloading anything was like that. You were probably getting videotapes.
It was tapes. Yeah, I remember having to trade tapes all the time to get certain things and get backlog of ECW stuff I hadn't seen, and I heard about the ROH. Somebody put on, there was a bunch of stuff on tape, like ECW and then the ROH stuff and a few things mixed in, and I do remember that. And yeah, because I was
and that was the business model at the very beginning for Ring of Honor, was to run the shows and then to build up a tape library of their shows.
Wow.
And so that was the thing, and then it slowly turned from the VHSs into the DVDs, and that was their business model. Like, the point was running shows plus getting the DVDs sold to the fan base that couldn't necessarily be live at the shows.
Yeah. No, it's funny to think how things have just changed so much. It's cool to get instant access, like going on a Ring of Honor's website and just being able to, download videos or watch them, on the website if needed. The new TV deal is awesome. I have, more access than ever before to Ring of Honor, than ever before, which is great. I talked to Maria Canales not that long ago about it. I think you just gotten the deal right as I was talking to her about it. How has that changed things for you guys? I mean, obviously you're getting more fans, I would think, more people turned on to what you're doing. There's kind of a boom in independent wrestling right now anyway, it seems like.
Yeah, and it's hard to look at Ring of Honor as an independent at this point anyway.
It's not, yeah.
I mean, my last stint in Ring of Honor, which took place in 2010, the middle of 2011 was when I left again. They were doing the television show on HDNet with Mark Cuban's channel,
right.
And right when I left and resumed my stuff with TNA, Sinclair Broadcasting bought them and had made plans to begin doing the syndicated show.
Wow!
And so when we came back, when Frankie and I left TNA and came to Ring of Honor in the 4 years that, from 2011 to the first Best in the World pay-per-view, when we came back, that was all through their hard work. Like all the guys like, Adam Cole and Michael Elgin and, the Briscoes and Kevin Steen, who was there for that long period of time as champion. Like those guys built that up from the day Sinclair bought them to the point where we were on live pay-per-view for the very first time and not iPay-per-view.
Yeah.
No,
it's a big deal. It's come so far, and you're right, it is, because it's something that, it's the next thing I watch after, if I have to cover WWE here, and like I said, we're really expanding to covering Ring of Honor, and even we're keeping an eye even on Jeff Jarrett's deal with Global Force Wrestling. So,
right.
Are you getting involved with them as well?
Not at this moment. Right now, I think like Ring of Honor is really the main focus for myself and Frankie.
Yeah.
There were discussions early on about maybe trying to do something with Jeff, but I felt like the schedule, I think, was conflicting. And, at the point when Jeff finally sort of turned into something that was getting tapings and having shows, we were in the thick of the title picture and actually were the champions, at that time. When the first show started, we were the champions. And so it wasn't beneficial for Jeff, I think, to have us come as the champions. I think it was better for him to sort of focus on guys that could make Global Force Wrestling their priority. Yeah. And at that point, we couldn't do that because Ring of Honor had been our priority and was our priority, and now it still is our priority.
I can remember being at a wrestling school in a few months in. I think we were watching, it might have been Glory by Honor in 2003, 2002. I can barely remember. It was you'd beaten Doug Williams, I think it was.
Right.
But I can remember watching that. That was another kind of mixed VHS tape that we were watching. But I can remember a lot of the guys thinking, maybe we can do this, because a lot of the people there were, under 200 pounds, things like that.
Well, sure. I think, at that point too, remember that ECW had already sort of closed down, and WCW had also closed down, but WCW had made cruiserweight wrestling a thing, and right. ECW had done the same thing without calling it cruiserweight wrestling, but giving the opportunity to guys like Malenko and Benoit and Chris Jericho and Rey Mysterio, where that was like a lot of people, the first time that they saw those wrestlers was on ECW television. It opened the door for a lot of guys that were, that size that may have like 10 years earlier been, dismissed in terms of like opportunities at a national level. And so, the guys that came up like myself and Bryan Danielson and Low Ki, watching the cruiserweight wrestling, watching the stuff that happened on ECW, like we were playing to our strengths at that point. Yeah, we weren't 6'5" and 240, but we were very athletic, and I felt personally that was my strength, and so I played to that. And so I was trying to wrestle as the stuff that I was watching in Japan, stuff that I was watching on WCW television, ECW back in the day, like trying to build a moveset based on that style of wrestling.
Yeah. No, it was definitely a lot of fun to watch, and for years watching it and watching you go back and forth really for a long time now, almost to Total on Cyber, TNA back to ROH, TNA. You've bounced around a little bit from them. I mean, including New Japan as well, but I mean mostly with TNA and ROH. What is every time when you've gone back to ROH, Ring of Honor, has things been different every time you go back? You're like, wow, this is so much has changed. And is it always for the better, or is it worse for you, or is it must be a better place than before? How does that all go for you?
It never really changed. Like the one thing that was always constant with Ring of Honor was, there was a very strong hunger with the guys in the locker room to try and make Ring of Honor more accessible, more of a phenomenon. for a lot of guys, Ring of Honor was the first, or is the first, taste of a national spotlight. And like that was never more apparent than when they were doing HDNet and then going into the Sinclair days where the television started. Like they started to be, it started to be where instead of being a company just based in Philadelphia and just doing the Northeast independent scene, now they were doing shows also in the Midwest, doing shows in Texas, doing shows in Vegas, doing shows south, like down near Florida and things like that. So there was more of a national thing. And so like these guys were getting their first taste of national attention. And so there's always been that hunger to try and, build Ring of Honor to get to the level where they are a national presence on the pro wrestling scene. So it's never been, I think the only thing that really was different was just the faces. Back in 2010, it was, guys like Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards and Kevin Steen. And now we're talking about guys like, Adam Cole and Michael Elgin and ACH, Cedric Alexander, those guys. And then in addition to that, the guys like Jay Briscoe and Mark and myself who, at the early days of Ring of Honor were one thing, but now we've, evolved and progressed to the point where we're, at the upper echelon of talent in that locker room and for the television show that is now being seen on a national scale.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's, more and more I get requests to do Ring of Honor reviews and to talk Ring of Honor than ever before. People that are maybe not the biggest wrestling fans, but they're more into wrestling. People that are moderate wrestling fans are asked about ROH and check out ROH where, years ago only the absolute hardcore wrestling fans, for me at least, were talking to me about Ring of Honor. But now it's spilt over because of YouTube and the internet and just people talking about it, and eventually someone says, I want to go see what they're talking about. What is that Ring of Honor? Years ago.
And not just that either, but like for the years that it was just syndicated, and then all of a sudden, just when TNA got onto Destination America, not too long after, now Ring of Honor gets on Destination America. So basically, that same platform that TNA had, Ring of Honor had, even though it was a different time period. Different, on at a different time in the day or whatever, but it was available to that same amount of fans. And so, like, when we started doing the Destination America stuff, there were a lot of places where Ring of Honor television wasn't available on syndication, but then did become available through cable and Destination America. So, I mean, that, again, opened more doors and made more people aware of Ring of Honor. So that was another step forward for ROH, was to get Destination America and be available to a wider audience.
You have any idea why they did that too? Because they pick up TNA, they pick up Ring of Honor. I mean, were they not sold on TNA staying around? So they picked up Ring of Honor in case at least they had both of them in case one went away. I mean, I'm
not really sure. I don't know what the mindset was for Destination America to do that.
Right.
And honestly, I guess it still remains to be seen. I mean, there's still discussion on what's going to happen with TNA at this point. At the end of the year, I guess the scuttlebutt is that after December they won't be on Destination America. But at the same time, no one's confirmed that, and we at Ring of Honor, like, no one has said anything to us if, like, what would happen to Ring of Honor if TNA were to leave Destination America. There's no real clear path of what's happening yet, but at the same time, there's really nothing we can do about that. All we can do is continue to put the television out that we're doing as Ring of Honor, continue to build that momentum, and no matter what happens with TNA and Destination America, we've got the spot where we're at. We've also got the syndicated channels, which Sinclair Broadcasting is thrilled with having, and in addition to that, we've got the relationships that we've got with not just the United States wrestling fan base, but also working with New Japan and building a brand overseas and getting more people aware of Ring of Honor over there.
Yeah, no, it's looking forward for you guys, and that's really important. But and not to look backward, but What do you think what is wrong with TNA? Like, what do you think the problems stem from over there? I've got a lot of ideas, but what do you attribute to their struggles?
I just think a big problem that they had was just like a revolving door of creative and management, just never really like a consistent like direction. And I felt like, you know, there was always great talent in the locker room, but it wasn't always being focused in a great direction,
right.
Which is unfortunate because, you know, I spent a lot of great years there, and it always felt like there was opportunity within our grasp, and then slowly but surely it seemed like it was getting farther and farther away, which is disappointing.
Yeah.
And, you know, I look at it now, being outside of TNA and seeing what's happening now with them, and, you know, the shows that they're doing now that have been taped so far in advance. And, you know, there was, as a result of that, not really having an idea of what's going to happen with them in the next, you know, 2-3 months. It's kind of disappointing, especially when I see guys that are friends of mine that I spent and shared the locker room with for many years. You know, you look at it now and you think that their future is sort of up in the air and what's going to happen with that. So I certainly hope that something concrete comes around for TNA's future and helps those guys, especially that talent roster, like I said. That's so many of my friends and so many talented guys that deserve an opportunity to be, you know, on a national spotlight. Hopefully something comes around so that TNA can sort of get back on their feet and start moving onward and upward.
Yeah, no, I mean, I hope so too. I think it's better for the business that's what happens. You know, it is confusing to me, you know, what's going on over there, and it should be, it just should be better. Every time you think they're getting momentum, it pulls back. Like you said, I think there was like 3 or 4 times I remember when it was like, here we go. You know, people and people jumped over the line. They were like, I mean, they were going overboard. They were saying, you know, here we come, WWE, TNA's coming for you, you know. But now that WWE's kind of launched this NXT stuff, and everyone is so into NXT, you know, in that mainstream part of wrestling, it's almost like that's what I saw TNA could have done. You know, that's what I see, you know, TNA being able to do, what NXT is doing, and it's what ROH has always been doing. And, yeah, they just can't quite make it happen. But the good news is, you know, where you are now is making it happen. Ring of Honor is doing really well. How has it been working with the Kingdom over the last few months or so?
Outstanding, man. I think that Mike Bennett and Matt Taven are incredibly talented, and you know, and they're just great guys too. They're great people to work with.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you know, there's a huge future for both of those guys, and I'm very fortunate that Frankie and I got the opportunity to work with them.
Yeah. And
like I said earlier about working with the guys in Ring of Honor, it forces us to keep at that top level. So like they're helping us in terms of keeping us sharp and keeping us focused at the same time that we're helping them by using what we have more of, which is that experience, and sort of helping them along in that respect. So, I mean, it's definitely a win-win situation for like the younger teams that we're getting a chance to work with, and for us that's keeping us motivated and keeping us at that top level, you know, to be able to get in the ring and hang with those guys. That's a goal that we're constantly striving to attain and go farther with, like trying to stay at that level with them. And, you know, it lit a fire in both myself and Frankie to be able to get there and work with all of these guys, not just the Kingdom, but specifically them right now because of the champs. But I mean, you know, I go back to the list of guys like Red Dragon and the Bucks and the Briscoes and War Machine, all of those guys, like working with all of that entire roster.
Yeah,
has been, you know, it's sort of rejuvenated both me and Frankie.
Yeah, it's been great to watch. And if Matt Taven's watching, give me my socks back, Matt. What are you doing?
I think I saw him put them on to wrestle last night. It's very possible.
He took my
I think
socks.
he wore them to wrestle with.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if those lucky socks now or what, but
he's stuffed. I'm convinced he stuffed his his trunks with him before he wrestled Biff Busick and Teddy Goods over here in New England a little while ago.
I can neither confirm nor deny that because I didn't even hear that rumor until just now, so I have no idea.
We'll have to ask him about it. It was right around then when you guys started feuding too. But I have a couple questions real quick before we let you go. But a couple more from some fans who tweeted me and emailed me, and I've got a couple. CM Punk fan at Aponte J's Move says, who is your dream wrestling opponent?
I think the one that I never got an opportunity to work with that I would have loved to do something with was Jericho. I was such a huge fan of not just his work, but his character. And I've said it in probably thousands of interviews where I felt like he was the perfect blend of athlete and character, especially, in the midst of many of his runs in WWE. The phrase or the cliche is he walked the walk and talked the talk.
Right.
And so he was always someone that I looked up to in that respect. And sorry, I don't want to say emulate because I didn't really do the same sort of stuff he did.
Yeah.
But I looked to try and do to be that guy that could do it both with his mouth and with his actions.
Oh yeah, no, definitely, Chris. I mean, that would be a match I want to see. I mean, maybe that's. Do you think that something like that could ever happen? And if it did, would it be because Chris Jericho wasn't in the WWE and he made some kind of appearance in Ring of Honor, or
I would think with Chris the way that he essentially now with the deal that he has, where there's sort of an open door for him to return back and forth to WWE.
Yeah.
I mean, make no mistake, man. The guys that get to WWE, I feel like once they've made it there. There really has to be a real strong reason for them to want to, venture in other places. You know what I mean? And I think Chris, with his passion for his music and having that creative freedom to go out and do things that aren't wrestling, and if he wants to return to wrestling, if the door's open in WWE, it makes more sense for him to do that rather than to go to a TNA or a Ring of Honor or a New Japan or anything like that. It just makes sense to go back to the place where he had his most success.
Well, dude, let's start
doing that makes him doing that, like going away for a while and then coming back. It just refreshes the people's ideas of him and makes him more marketable when he does come back. So I mean, I think the only way it would happen is if I ever somehow got my way into WWE. But like I said, I don't think that's happening. So I think this might be just one for the dream.
Well, you know what,
though? The internet discussion.
You know what, though? The WWE's doing all these little specials on NXT randomly. They, oh man, who'd they just bring in at that at Takeover in Brooklyn? They brought in Jushin Thunder Liger. I mean, well,
right.
Why not? Let's start the movement right now. Christopher Daniels versus Chris Jericho, NXT Takeover, whatever. Now, if Ring of Honor lets you go there, I mean, to do one match like that, how about that? We'll start that movement on Twitter.
Well, get it started, and so we'll see what kind of momentum we can get with it. But honestly, I when I saw stuff like Joe going there, and it's James Storm going to NXT, like it crossed my mind to try and reach out. But at the same time, I felt like the thing that I had going at Ring of Honor right now with Frankie and the way that the company has used us and worked with us in the last year and a half, I can't say that I'm looking for greener pastures. I'm really happy with the way things are going at Ring of Honor right now for both of us. And I'm satisfied. If that were never to come around, if that opportunity were never to come around, I don't think I'd be upset. I feel like I'm doing what I want to do with Ring of Honor, and at this point, with their ever-growing fan base, I feel like ROH is a place to stick around.
Right, I agree. I think there's a lot of momentum there. You're doing a really good job, and we're just so happy to be so entertained with Ring of Honor right now, and you're doing great. And I want to thank you for stopping by to do this with me. I really appreciate it.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me, and then thank you to all the fans that pestered you enough to reach out to me. So I appreciate that, and thank you to you fans for all the support over the years. I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for the continued support of guys whether I was in ROH or TNA or New Japan or wherever I was, or on the independent scene. You know, a lot of that has to do with a fervent wrestling fan base, and I appreciate it.
Now, here's an important question. Where can we get the Christopher Daniels merchandise?
Okay, well, my website is fallenangelchristopher.com. There's some stuff there, but you could also go to Pro Wrestling Tees.
Yes.
I have a pretty extensive collection there. I just debuted 4 new designs on that. So yeah, you can do all that. And then keep in mind, like, everybody, every time someone buys something from Pro Wrestling Tees, they're entered once a month. I pick a random fan to get autographed merchandise, whether it's a DVD or a comic book or, you know, any of the stuff that I've got, you know, just to say thanks to the people that are supporting me through that particular, through Pro Wrestling Tees. And then ROH Wrestling as well. They've also got a lot of great, not just merchandise of myself, but all the guys that work for us. Okay, cool, man. Thanks very much.
All right. Hey, have a good night, okay?
All right, bro. Have a good one. Thanks for everything.
All right. Take it easy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Hey, guys, I'm so happy that you joined me for Sunday Night Slam, episode number 2. Of course, you guys know I've been doing this on YouTube for almost 3 years now. And as far as this wrestling show goes, and again, I want to shout out, thank you for 20,000 subscribers here on the Joe Cronin Show, the Joe Cronin Wrestling Podcast, and of course, ExtremeWrestlingPodcast.com, where you want to go, Podbreak.com, all my affiliations there, of course, WrestleCrate, Pro Wrestling Tees, and more. And again, for Christopher Daniels for joining us, and Ring of Honor, which you can check out on Destination America. It is absolutely awesome stuff. Go check out their website, the official Ring of Honor website, probably ringofhonor.com. And because I go on their website all the time and I never remember their web address. I'm sure it's ringofhonor.com. Yeah, it's rohwrestling.com. That's what it is. rohwrestling.com is where you want to go to get a hold of their videos, their roster. The Young Bucks, now of course in ROH. Just a great time for tag team wrestling if you're a fan of that. Something we wanted to touch on for sure during this broadcast, of course. If you guys want to support my show, it's in the description box below. Go check that donation area out. And, of course, Billy Gunn was fired by the WWE, so we continue to get more news on that, of course. Billy Gunn fired at his job in the Performance Center. You may know Billy Gunn from Tough Enough, one of the trainers. Of course, if you're like me, and then you know Billy Gunn from all the years in the WWE and everywhere else he's been. Brian Alvarez noted on Wrestling Observer Live that it's believed that the WWE only tests their contracted talents, not the coaches and staff at the Performance Center. This is probably why there was never a negative WWE wellness test for Gunn. However, WWE officials were forced to release Gunn because they can't have one of their trainers testing positive for performance-enhancing drugs, as it makes their entire developmental program look bad. No word yet on who will replace Gunn. WWE officials are reportedly considering 2 people. That's very vague. But, of course, you can remember Bill DeMont being fired not that long ago and Albert taking his place. And now it looks like, Billy Gunn's seat opens up. Very bizarre. Man, I love Billy Gunn, though. It's too bad. It's just that this looks terrible, but I felt like he was doing a great job. But, I mean, this has nothing to do with his job performance. It has to do with his performance body or whatever. I don't know. You wonder if it had anything to do. Remember that injury he had a couple years ago with the Shield? And he had to go to the hospital right after WrestleMania? But I don't know what it means. But, guys, I think we had a pretty good show tonight. I really enjoyed talking to Christopher Daniels. I enjoyed all your feedback. Thank you for tweeting me some questions at Joe Cronin Show on Twitter if you want to get a hold of me there, and email me personally if you have issues, questions. I am open for consultation to help you with your YouTube channels now. Just email me, joecroninshow at yahoo.com. Pricing available on joecroninshow.com and joecroninshow.net. Thanks for listening, guys. I will see you in the next podcast. I will see you live tomorrow night after WWE Monday Night Raw. We're going to be live right here taking your phone calls after Monday Night Raw. My name is Joe Cronin, and I know more than you.
You're listening to The Joe Cronin Show.